Hello, everyone. It's Mikey, and it's been a while since I did Mikey's Moments in my little adventure in the internet life. For those of you watching on YouTube, thank you. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. You, those listening on a podcast, do the same, like and subscribe. I've talked about a lot of things. I've talked about sports. I've talked about movies. Talked about comics. Now I'm going to talk about something that's probably going to be the longest talk I've had yet. I'm not going to rush it, and let's see if we can't have a little fun today. What I'm going to talk about today is something, as you can see, of those watching on YouTube. I'm wearing an iconic Marvel T-shirt, and those of you listening on podcast, believe me, I look good in it. So what we're going to talk about is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU. As of today, there has been 31 movies and countless television shows. I'm going to be reviewing the 31 movies before Guardians of the Galaxy come out. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes out in May. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank the 31 shows or 31 films according to my liking. It's Mikey's comprehensive list. I'm going to tell you why each film is at its spot and why I believe it's there. I'm hoping this fosters some discussion, and I'm sure it will. But before I really jump into that, I'm going to talk about mainstream, big-time Hollywood, especially since we're upon award season. What I want to say is yes, Marvel Cinematic movies may not be for everybody, but they are an art form, just like comic books are an art form, just like comic book writing is an art form. Anything that pulls something out of a person and makes them give a piece of themselves is an art form. And these comics have been around for a long time, and now they're getting a second chance at a new art form, the art form of film. And not every one of these films is great. Not every one of these films is award ready. Not every one of these films was maybe necessary, but the storytellers thought so. So they're part of the cinematic universe, part of the greater plan. And for those writers and directors and actors who believe they're above that, they're just damn ass wrong. Because you know what? These are the movies people want to see because these are the stories that are making them forget for a while. But as you see my list, and we get to it, and I go through it, you're going to see that a lot of these movies that I like, it's because they have a character connection. The ones I don't, they've taken the characters and pulled away for something else. So with no further ado, let's start at number 31 with The Eternals. This is by far the worst Marvel movie in my opinion. Why? It felt rushed. The characters didn't feel like you cared about them. To me, it felt like Marvel was like, well, we just had the payoff with Endgame. The Avengers are no more. We need another team, especially since we know we're going to be losing the Guardians of the Galaxy in a while, too. So, we're going to put a team out there so that people have a team they can look up to. Well, I didn't look up to these people because I didn't care about these people. And if there's a sequel, I might not even go see it. And you know what? I've seen every Marvel movie in the movie theater because that's where they're supposed to be seen. And I saw this one time and didn't even think about going back. So at number 31, The Eternals. Number 30, Thor: The Dark World. Thor, the original movie, which is farther up on the list and we'll get to, was a fine origin story. But this was a trying to punch you to get another Infinity Stone. And I'm not 100% sure that that was actually going to be an Infinity Stone. I think Marvel does a little mapping, little piecing it together, and then they go, oh, we could use this, we can do that. And that's what I feel this was. So Thor: Dark World, bad villains, bad stories, and then they tied that movie in to their television series that was on ABC at the time, The Agents of Shield, and then just kind of forgot about it. So yeah, that's not too good. Next up is Iron Man 3. Now, if you've been following me and you understand, this just had too much goddamn CGI in it for me. I just don't like CGI. I like practical effects that are tempered with CGI. And now I understand sometimes you need CGI characters, and if they're done right, like I said in my first video about CGI, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it. If you haven't listened to it, go ahead and listen to it. And that's basically why I don't really like Iron Man 3. Too much CGI. I don't need 45 Iron Man suits flying around. I need a comprehensive story. How come Tony didn't fall into alcoholism like he did in the comic books? That would have been a more compelling story than what we got. And then don't even get me started on The Mandalorian. They had to go back and fix that. And Marvel knew they had to go fix that. Of course, they're going to tell us they had that to plan the whole time. But like I said, I think Marvel has an outline, and then they try to fit some stuff in. And as a tabletop gamer and a person who makes a story on the fly a lot, I know why they do it. It just makes it easier if your players pick the next path. And us fans sometimes pick the next path from Marvel. Next up is Age of Ultron, the second Avengers movie. It it could have been so much more, but I think the executives and the director at the time, Joss Whedon, were butting heads. They didn't know where they wanted to go. I think the Kevin Feige or Feige or however you say his name, he was at his pinnacle of I'm taking control of this process, and because he had had so much success, it was hard to fight him, and it was just a disappointment for the second Avengers film. It was a turning point, getting into the next phase, getting them towards the end, but it's a decent film. It's got a couple good lines in it. Most of the Marvel movies have got a couple good lines in it, and this it just fell flat for me. After Age of Ultron comes the Incredible Hulk. I think this was lower on my list for a long time, but it's moved up after I've watched it a few times. Yes, Edward Norton is difficult to deal with, and what Mark Ruffalo did with the character of the Hulk, don't get me wrong, it's amazing. I would have liked to see what Edward Norton could have done with it. I think the story here, again, is just another simple origin story, or maybe even less than an origin story. But I think if you go back and rewatch it, you'll see some of the aspects of what will become the MCU. Some of the little Easter eggs, some of the nuances of storytelling and callback. I think this was really prevalent in The Incredible Hulk, and I think you should give it another watch. That's why it made it number 27. Number 26, Thor: Love and Thunder. Uh, as we'll see on my list, Thor's on it a couple more times because he's the first of the original Avengers to get four of his own films. This was the success of Ragnarok. They were like, let's take the funny parts and go overboard with it. And I just didn't care for that. I think they should have brought him back to a little more seriousness, like you got in the end of Thor Ragnarok, which I'll talk about a little bit more when we get there. And yeah, I think silly works sometimes, but it didn't work this time. And those damn goats were just annoying. I don't care if the people who like the goats. I didn't. They needed to go. And next up is Captain America: The First Avenger. And again, this is a run-of-the-mill origin story. Cap happens to be one of my favorite characters. I really like Captain America. He's played brilliantly by Chris Evans. But this story, again, it's just an origin story. I think they wanted to make sure that they had all the blocks in place for the Avengers because if the Avengers didn't work, they were done. And they didn't know if they'd get to make another Captain America movie, so they did it. And they've done some callbacks to it, which is their forte. But yeah, it's just a run of the mill. It's Cap, and if you like Cap, you liked it, but I didn't like it enough to put it up higher. Number 24 is Spider-Man: Homecoming. Now, some people are going to disagree with me on this. I think this will be the first one on the list. Since it's at number 24, people are going to be like, what? Are you kidding? That's Spider-Man's first outing after Civil War, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, and I'm afraid Marvel's going to do this in the next couple phases, which is going to bother me, and this is the first instance of it. They just kind of touched on the origin of Spider-Man. Oh, I got bitten by this radioactive spider, kind of a gloss over him, because they had had some origin movies already, and they didn't want to do another Spider-Man origin movie in the MCU, which I personally think was a mistake. This movie should have been maybe give us a half an hour of a flashback. Give us a piece of it. It didn't, they called it Homecoming kind of for two reasons. Because he was coming home to the MCU. He was on loan from Sony. There's the whole business angle and all that. But you know what? It didn't feel like a homecoming because, yes, I know who Spider-Man is. I've seen Spider-Man movies. I read Spider-Man comics. But what about the poor sap who didn't? Maybe they needed to see Uncle Ben die. Now, of course, further on, we realize that this universe may not have had an Uncle Ben, or if he did, he might still be out there. Who knows? We don't know where that's going to go. But I think this should have been an origin story instead of a go-it-alone story. And then he really didn't really go it alone because, Iron Man was there. Next up, number 23, Iron Man 2. Yes, Iron Man 2 didn't even make the top 20 because Iron Man 2 is not that good of a movie, folks. It's better than the ones on the list ahead of it or behind it as far as I'm concerned. But it was flawed. I think it was rushed. I don't know if Jon Favreau had his heart and passion into it like he did the first Iron Man. So yeah, that's where it's at. It's just especially I don't know. The Mickey Rourke character just never seemed threatening. Actually, the Sam Rockwell character as the all-out bad guy just by himself, I think could have been a whole lot better. But again, this is my opinion. Some of you are probably going to disagree with it, and I'm okay with that. Next up, at number 22, is Black Widow. Black Widow, I waited 10 years for this movie. Ever since she was in Iron Man 2, which was one a very good bright spot, I wanted to see Black Widow. After Avengers, finding out what the hell happened in Budapest was on my mind, and I knew we could get that in a Black Widow movie. But you know what? The payoff on that was lame. Just they waited too long. The one bright spot for me, though, is Florence Pugh. Florence Pugh. I think that's how you say her name. I'm not good with names. But I think she's a more compelling Black Widow than Black Widow. You know how sometimes you get a cover song and the band that covers it does a better job than the original? That's how I feel. Especially if you watch the Hawkeye miniseries, which is on Disney Plus, which isn't a plug. If you have Disney Plus, you've probably watched it already. And that's just it. I think watch the scene between her and Kate Bishop. Oh, I think that is by far the best scene in all of the MCU from television series. Just go watch it. If you can't find it on YouTube or something, go see it. Next up, number 21, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Ryan Coogler, great director, great storyteller. Some people are going to think this should probably be up higher. I liked it. I enjoyed the movie. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. And partly because, I'm sorry, as much as Chadwick Boseman is missed and so forth, they should have recast that the Black Panther. The movie just didn't feel the same, didn't have that same vibe for me. And Ryan Coogler as a director, like you watch the original Creed, the boxing action scenes, they're good, but it's the moments of humanity when Rocky's talking to Creed or Creed's talking to his soon-to-be wife and girlfriend. These emotional connections, and that's what you got in the first Black Panther. You got those emotional connections. And you had moments of that in this, but it wasn't sustained. I think it could have been done better if they had brought back and recast somebody. I know why they did what they did, but I just don't agree with it, and that's why it's farther down on the list at number 21. Now we're to number 20. We're in the top 20 now. And that would be the newest Marvel movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania. I enjoyed this film. Probably enjoyed this film, and after some time, a couple years from now, it might be up higher on the list. I didn't really enjoy it as much for the Ant-Man characters as I did Kang. As a comic book reader, as a comic book geek, I'm well aware of his abilities and stuff, and I like the way Marvel's going with it. Anybody who's not a comic book person, let's just tell you this. The Avengers have never defeated Kang. They've just kept him at bay. They've beat Thanos, but they've never beat Kang. Let that sink in. So the next couple of movies leading up to Kang, this could be a good ride, and I think this movie did a good job of jumping him off. And I think the Ant-Man aspect of family, they were trying a little too hard. So that's why it's just at number 20. At number 19 is Shang-Chi and the Legends of the Ten Rings. This movie actually surprised me. I didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did, and that's why it's in the top 20. I liked the comedy of it. I also liked the action of it. It was a nice save by Marvel to make him bring in the real Mandalorian, sort of say, because of what they did with the Iron Man 3. I still don't think they did that quite right, but Marvel's not going to get everything right for everybody. And as I've said in my past podcast, YouTube slash videos, I am a bit of a fanboy, and I could go into that, but this was a pleasant surprise and one of the more genuine movies, I think, especially when it's, again, just an origin movie. Which brings us to number 18, another origin movie, Thor, the original Thor. This was good. Of course, Sir Anthony Hopkins steals the whole damn thing, and he's only in it for like 10 minutes. Um, but it's a solid origin story, nothing too compelling. It sets up Loki as the bad guy for the Avengers movie. It lets Thor know he's going to have to come back to Earth. It's just a nice, like, going down the diving board, jumping off, making your splash. So that's why it's at 18. Number 17, another origin movie. Different phase of Marvel movies, but that'd be Doctor Strange. Again, origin movies are pretty simplistic. They don't really add a lot. They set up the next movies, more character depth. They give you the outline, and Doc Strange did. It brought magic into the Marvel Universe. Well, it brought a different type of magic into the Marvel Universe. Um, they picked a solid actor. It gave a lot of hope for the future, and that's what origin stories do. Next up is Spider-Man. At 16, Spider-Man Far From Home. This was the second Spider-Man in the MCU, and this one felt a little more like Spider-Man. He had a little more humor, a little more quip, had a little more intrigue, took him out of the city. So yeah, I liked this Spider-Man a lot more, and I think Marvel kind of got a feeling, had to work with Sony a little bit, was afraid of where it was going, and this movie just paid off a little bit better than the first one. Number 15, we have Doctor Strange and the Madness of the Multiverse. And this, again, I really enjoyed the movie. And after a couple years, it may be higher up on the list. It's too new, too fresh. Maybe that's my opinion. I like where they went with the story. I like how they fleshed out Doctor Strange and made him a little more human. Kind of like they tried to do with Tony in Iron Man 2. The parallels between those two guys go beyond goatees. But yeah, I really liked the movie story, giving us the bridge to the multiverse, letting us know about the incursions, because we're going to be getting a lot of those. It's really setting some things up. So yeah, that's why it landed where it did. After the multiverse brings us to number 14. I'm looking at my list for those of you on the YouTube channel. You can see me staring at something, and that is Infinity War. Now you're like, ooh, Infinity War is on 14? Didn't it make the top 10? No, Infinity War didn't. Because we all knew it was leading up to this. All those other movies in phase 1, 2, and 3 was leading up to this. We were ready for this war. We were ready for the Infinity War. We were ready for the heartbreak, for the fighting and all that. But it's really just part 1 of the whole ending. And the fact that they made us wait a year between Infinity War and Endgame, that's what made Endgame, I think, such a payoff. You know, they could have just popped them all out or made it a 5-hour movie or whatever they could have done. But Infinity War is good. I like how, for me, like I said, I'm a Captain America fan. You know, he comes in, the tension between him and Tony, you know, is going to be there because Tony's off in one place, Cap's stuck on Earth. It's the end of the Avengers to bring them back to being the Avengers. So yeah, it's at 14. Number 13, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Again, Volume 2, a little more in depth about the characters. We get to feel them a little more. We get a little more about Ego. We get a little more about Rocket. It's a little darker than the first one, but it's still got that humor and the good music. So it's up there, and you'll see that the other one, the original Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, is up a little higher. But yeah, it landed here at 13. Number 12, the original Avengers. The original Avengers, it was the culmination. Phase 1, bringing all the characters, all those origin stories together. And Marvel didn't know if it was going to work, and it worked quite well. You could have a superhero movie. You could have a huge team, a great threat. Set up Thanos. It gave us the entire Infinity Saga, and I loved it. And I still go back on it. I don't know if it's held up as well as it could have, but it's a good movie, and it's number 12. Number 11, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Great sequel. I think it is really good because you get the payoff after Civil War for some of the characters. You see Scott trying to be more of a family man. There's just something about the film that I feel is just, in my opinion, the Ant-Man movies are some of the best in Marvel. You'll see that as we go down the list here. We're heading towards the top 10, and I think the dynamics of the characters in this one were just closer. They felt more like a team without it being made a team, pushing to be a team like they did with the Eternals all the way back at 31. Which brings us to the top 10. Drum roll? I can't do a drum roll, but here we go. The top 10 list of the MCU, according to Mikey. At number 10, we have Black Panther. This film was amazing. As I said earlier, Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa was amazing, and his passing is sad, and I do believe they should have recast it. I'm not going to change my mind on that. But this film flushed out the character and then brought in other characters that we learned to care about quickly because of their dynamic. The action sequences were solid. The film went in directions we hadn't seen, and it really helped set up the key component of Wakanda in the Endgame in Infinity Wars, which were a necessity. And it's in the top 10 because of that. It's a good movie. It's gonna hold up well over time, and I squarely put that in the hands of Ryan Coogler, the director. Number 9, Captain America: Civil War. Now, some people are going to argue this isn't even a Captain America movie, that this is Avengers 2.5. But it is. It's about Cap. It's about Cap realizing and figuring out that he's not who he thought he was. It's about Cap realizing that, yeah, he became a super soldier and he fought Hydra and he took on S.H.I.E.L.D. and all these things. But it's him realizing that he's still human and flawed. And trying to save his friend cost him so much. Cost other friendships. Cost him to turn on his own team. This is a Captain America movie. And it's probably what Marvel should be really proud of, is the Captain America movies from the first Avenger, which is all the way up on my list. All the way up, where is it? First Avenger number 25. All the way down to number 9 for the third film. That should tell you something about how they flushed this character out, and the actors and the storytelling. I think Marvel should really be proud of themselves with that. Number 8, Spider-Man: No Way Home. This film is touching, but it's done right. You bring in the other Spider-Men. You bring in the death of Aunt May. You see Spider-Man being Spider-Man. There's humor in this film, and he's more quippy, and it just felt more like what you get in the comics. This is what Far From Home wasn't. This is what Homecoming wasn't. This, in my opinion, is the first Spider-Man movie in the MCU, and it works so well, and it sets up so much. And I'm really hoping Tom Holland gets a 4th Spider-Man movie because of it. And yeah, so that's why it lands at number 8. Number 7, Captain Marvel. Now, a lot of people are not going to like this, the fact that this is in the top 10. Well, guess what? I'm going to point out you're wrong. 1, I don't care what her political beliefs are or whether or not she smiles enough or not. Brie Larson is an amazing actress, and she brings it in this movie. two scenes for you to see if you don't believe me. The first scene is when they find out how she got her powers, and she leaves that cabin in tears because she doesn't know who she is anymore. She's got all these personalities going, and she's split. And she doesn't know where she's going to go. And her friend tells her how brave she was, what kind of hero she was. And that brings her to tears because she realizes the real power within her is the fact that she survived. She's a survivor. And then the next scene is when she realizes she's being held back by the Kree. She takes off the inhibitor from her powers and lets it all out and becomes the most powerful character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And she owns it. She carries it. And that's because of the actress. And this movie is good. It's a good story. It's got some callbacks. Probably the worst part is the CGI de-aged Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. But hey, you got to do what you got to do to tell a story sometimes. And I'm not a fan of CGI, but in situations like that where it's done well and works, the only time it didn't really work is when 80-year-old, 90-year-old, whatever Sam is these days had to run. You know, that body ain't moving like a 40-year-old. That body was moving like a 70-year-old. And number 6, Avengers Endgame. It was the payoff. It was the end of the Infinity War. It gave us what we wanted. Gave us a send-off. I thought Cap was going to die. They threw the clock at us, and guess who died? Tony. We cried, we laughed, we yelled, we screamed. This movie was a 3-hour thrill ride. They gave us, the fans, what we wanted. We saw the Avengers assemble. We saw the return of the people who were gone. We saw Thanos get defeated and his legs turn to jelly, like he said in Infinity War. It was just amazing. And it will always be the gem in their Infinity Gauntlet, so to say. And my hat's off to Marvel. They bit off a huge undertaking, and it showed up in the end with Endgame. Number 5, the start, Iron Man. Iron Man is a fantastic movie. And why is it only at 5? Because I think there's some more, in my opinion, that are better. But Iron Man, I saw it in the theaters. I was like, my God, that is the best superhero movie I've ever seen. And it was for about a month. And then Christopher Nolan's Batman The Dark Knight came out. But that's a whole different podcast for some other time. But that movie, Robert Downey Jr., I am Iron Man. They couldn't have picked a better person for it. I think it's because he parallels in his own life so much of what Tony Stark went through in the comics, and they didn't even really touch on it. And it was a movie that launched it all. There would be no MCU without it, and if that movie hadn't been as good as it was. So my hat's off to Jon Favreau. My hat's off to Robert Downey Jr., to the entire cast. Thank you. Thank you for the MCU. And that's why you're at number 5. Yeah, you're at number 5. Number 4, Thor Ragnarok. Thor had 2 terrible movies. And then they finally got it right. And then they gave him a 4th terrible movie. Because they took what worked in this and overdid it in the next one. But this one, we saw humor. We saw Thor in a light we didn't see before. We saw him having to do things. The Hulk came back. It helped send up us towards Infinity War and Endgame. But what was most touching for me is watch the elevator scene with him, with Thor and Loki and those actors who've been together. And when Thor says, I thought we were going to be fighting side by side forever, brother. That's when Thor realizes his brother died, but not at Thanos' hands or somebody else's hands or from his scheming. He died because he realized Loki was never going to be with him. And then when he gets Loki back for a few minutes, and Loki looks over at him in Infinity War, Loki knows that too. Loki knows that he gave up on Thor. And that movie's just, again, it's about character. And when the characters touch you, the movies touch you. So it's at number 4. Number 3, my biggest mistake. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. I saw the original trailer and I said this was going to be Marvel's first flop. I did not go see it in the theaters when it was originally released. It was the first Marvel movie I did not have tickets for weeks in advance. I was stubborn. I was a fanboy. I was like, these are second class characters and nobody even really knows who they are. How are they going to make this a good movie? And then in my town, we used to have what we call cheap theaters. It was a secondhand theater. It's not here anymore. But we went to it, me and my friend, because we went to a movie every weekend pre-COVID. And guess what? The only thing that was worth maybe trying to watch was Guardian of the Galaxy. And I was fucking wrong. This movie had everything. Humor, fun, music. And it made you care about the damn characters. It made you care about these characters no one had ever heard of. And I cursed myself. And every Guardians of the Galaxy that has come out, even their Christmas special, opening day, I'm there. And I'm going to be sad because in May, we get the last one. And Marvel has done well at picking people to work with. And they picked James Gunn, and James Gunn's done a lot. So I'm hoping to see what he does with DC. But again, that's time for another podcast, another YouTube video. So on number 2, Ant-Man. Yeah, you heard me right. Ant-Man at number 2. Why? Because of this. Every Marvel movie up to Ant-Man was a superhero movie. Yeah, well, most of them were. But it was a superhero movie. But this wasn't a superhero movie. This was a heist movie that just happened to have superheroes in it. And I think that's what Marvel realized is they could do different genres, could try different genres. Do a horror movie, do a strange comedy. They're doing some of those on their Disney Plus now. But this they did in the movie theaters with Ant-Man. They took a heist movie and threw superheroes in it. You take Scott Lang and have him rob someplace without the Ant-Man suit, and it'll still be a decent movie. So yes, I think you need to go back and look at Ant-Man, the original Ant-Man, with different eyes. Which brings us to number 1. The number 1 movie, according to Mikey, in the MCU is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. It's been number 1 for a long time, and I think it's going to be there for a long time. Because you see, this is the perfect movie. In my opinion, a perfect movie. Right up there with the Godfather saga, Goodfellas, Star Wars. This movie has it all. Spies, action sequences. You care about the characters. Who didn't tear up when they thought Nick Fury was dead? But it's a Marvel movie, so you knew he's probably wasn't dead. Captain's speech to get everybody working. You find out that S.H.I.E.L.D. is fucking Hydra? Come on! But you take out the S.H.I.E.L.D. and the superheroes, this movie still works. It's a spy movie, an espionage movie. Top Spy. Hell, you could have called it James Bond. And don't get me started on James Bond movies, I like those too. Different genre. But yes, this movie has it all. And like I said, it's the journey. It's the middle part of Captain America's trilogy. This is when he's starting to realize, hell, man, maybe I'm not the man I thought I was. And there you have it. My list, as of now, of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. From 31 to number 1. From Eternals to Captain America the Winter Soldier. Now, if you haven't, hit the like, hit the subscribe, go in the comments, argue with me. I'd love that. I'm going to try to get more content out. I know it's been a while since I got something out, but I've got things going on in my life. I'm trying to get to a place where I can try to schedule this. I'm going to try for Friday nights, but it can get difficult sometimes. If I can just find me an hour and a half on Fridays, maybe I will be able to squeeze these out. This is my longest one so far, but I knew it was going to be kind of long. I don't know if I really like this length. I'm kind of thirsty, and I didn't bring anything over here for me to drink. But here's Mikey. I'm going to steal something from Mr. Stan Lee, Excelsior to you, and go live a moment. Go enjoy your adventure. Take care. Mikey loves y'all. Peace out.